Reality television claims to show real people living real lives. But what if some of the most shocking parts of those lives were never meant to be seen? Behind the emotional breakdowns, explosive arguments, and carefully edited confessionals are pasts that didn't disappear when the cameras turned on. Some of these stars entered fame already carrying criminal histories buried beneath polished storylines. Others discovered that reality TV didn't change who they were. It simply gave their worst decisions a larger stage. As their popularity grew, so did the consequences they thought they had escaped. So here's the question: how many reality stars you trusted were hiding criminal pasts long before they became famous, and which story will change the way you see reality TV forever? Before we begin the countdown, tell us in the comments, do you believe reality shows should be required to reveal the criminal histories of their cast members, or should those secrets stay off camera? 25. Teresa Giudice. Teresa Giudice became synonymous with the Real Housewives of New Jersey, emerging as a dominant presence whose emotional outbursts, fierce loyalty to family, and extravagant lifestyle defined the early identity of the franchise. She projected the image of a woman who had built success through determination and traditional values, presenting wealth as both a reward and a symbol of status. Viewers rarely questioned how that lifestyle was sustained. Behind the scenes, however, Teresa's financial reality was built on systematic deception. Long before her arrest became public, she and her husband engaged in falsifying loan applications, concealing income, and misrepresenting assets to maintain the appearance of affluence. When federal investigators exposed the scheme, the persona she had carefully cultivated unraveled almost instantly. Teresa pleaded guilty and served a prison sentence, marking one of the most dramatic falls in reality television history. The fallout extended far beyond legal consequences. Her marriage collapsed, public trust eroded, and her return to television carried a permanent stain. Though she attempted to rebuild her brand through resilience narratives and personal reinvention, her legacy remains inseparable from the scandal. Teresa's story illustrates how reality television can elevate illusion until the truth forces it to collapse. 24. Joe Giudice. Joe Giudice appeared on The Real Housewives of New Jersey as the blunt, traditional patriarch who seemed uncomfortable with fame yet firmly in control of his household. His on-screen persona emphasized toughness and authority, often positioning him as the grounding force behind his wife's explosive personality. That image masked years of deliberate financial misconduct. Joe orchestrated fraudulent tax filings, hid business income, and manipulated bankruptcy proceedings in an effort to protect assets and preserve a lifestyle built on illusion. The situation worsened when it became clear that he lacked legal U.S. citizenship, a fact that transformed a financial crime into an immigration crisis. After serving time in federal prison, Joe was detained and ultimately deported permanently, severing his life in America. The fallout was devastating. His family fractured, his public image shifted from provider to liability, and his reality TV presence ended in disgrace. Unlike many cast members who survived scandal, Joe disappeared from the spotlight entirely. His story stands as a stark reminder that reality fame can expose misconduct rather than shield it, and that some consequences cannot be edited away. 23. Abby Lee Miller. Abby Lee Miller built her reality TV empire on authority. As the commanding force behind Dance Moms, she presented herself as an uncompromising mentor whose harsh methods produced excellence. Her persona relied on control, discipline, and dominance, making her both feared and central to the show's success. Yet while she scrutinized others relentlessly, Abby was hiding her own financial misconduct. During bankruptcy proceedings, she concealed income earned from the show and related ventures, misrepresenting her assets, while continuing to profit behind the scenes. Federal investigators later uncovered the deception, revealing a stark contradiction between the control she projected and the chaos of her financial behavior. Abby pleaded guilty and served time in prison, a downfall that stunned audiences accustomed to seeing her dictate consequences rather than face them. The fallout permanently altered her reputation. Though she attempted to return to television and reframe herself as resilient, her authority had been irreversibly damaged. Abby's legacy shifted from feared instructor to cautionary figure, proof that power on camera offers no protection when real-world accountability arrives. 22. Jen Shah. Jen Shah entered the Real Housewives of Salt Lake City as a force of spectacle, presenting herself as a self-made entrepreneur whose wealth, confidence, and dramatic flair dominated every scene. Her persona revolved around excess designer wardrobes, elaborate parties, and an insistence that her success came from relentless hustle. What viewers did not see was the machinery operating behind that image. For years, Jen participated in a nationwide telemarketing operation that preyed on elderly and vulnerable individuals, promising services that never existed, while siphoning money from victims who could least afford to lose it. The arrest, which occurred during production, exposed the disconnect between her televised bravado and the reality of the harm caused off-screen. As evidence mounted, the story shifted from reality drama to federal prosecution. Jen eventually pleaded guilty, admitting her role in the scheme. The fallout was severe and irreversible. Her lavish image collapsed, alliances vanished, and her storyline transformed into a public reckoning. Jen Shah's rise and fall illustrate how reality television can amplify illusion until the consequences of deception become impossible to ignore. 21. Joe Exotic. Joe Exotic became a global phenomenon through Tiger King, where his eccentric fashion, explosive temperament, and chaotic zoo empire turned him into an unlikely star. He framed himself as an outsider, fighting powerful enemies, positioning his life as a spectacle of rebellion and survival. Beneath that performance, however, lay a pattern of criminal behavior that extended far beyond eccentricity. Investigators uncovered years of illegal wildlife activity, financial manipulation, and escalating personal vendettas that blurred the line between obsession and danger. His rivalry with an animal rights activist intensified into a criminal case when authorities alleged he sought to arrange a murder for hire, shifting his narrative from bizarre entertainment to serious federal crime. The conviction dismantled the myth Joe had built around himself. The fallout fractured public opinion. Some clung to the image of a misunderstood anti-hero, while others saw the exposure of a deeply manipulative figure. Joe Exotic's legacy now exists at the intersection of fame and criminality, demonstrating how reality television can turn real-world misconduct into spectacle before accountability arrives. 20. Amber Portwood. Amber Portwood became a central figure on Teen Mom, offering viewers an unfiltered look at young motherhood shaped by emotional volatility and unstable relationships. Her persona was defined by vulnerability and confrontation, with producers often framing her struggles as a raw portrait of personal growth. Yet the most serious aspects of her behavior unfolded beyond the show's narrative. Amber was involved in repeated domestic incidents that escalated into criminal charges, revealing a pattern of violence inconsistent with the redemption arc she sometimes attempted to project. Court proceedings exposed the gravity of these actions, leading to jail time that disrupted both her life and the franchise built around her story. The fallout reshaped her public identity, sympathy gave way to concern, and her appearances became overshadowed by questions of accountability rather than progress. Although she later pursued therapy and public reflection, the shadow of her criminal past remained. Amber's story underscores how reality television can document struggle without fully confronting its causes, and how fame can magnify instability rather than resolve it. 19. Ronnie Ortiz-Magro. Ronnie Ortiz-Magro became one of the most recognizable faces of Jersey Shore, embodying the show's raw intensity through explosive emotions, heavy partying, and a turbulent relationship that often drove entire seasons. On camera, his volatility was framed as messy entertainment, a reflection of youth and excess amplified by nightlife culture. Off-camera, however, the same behavior translated into repeated encounters with law enforcement. Ronnie became involved in a series of domestic incidents that escalated into arrests and serious allegations, exposing a pattern of aggression that could no longer be dismissed as reality TV theatrics. Police reports and court involvement painted a far more troubling picture than the edited storylines suggested. As the legal consequences mounted, his position within the franchise weakened, and public perception shifted from chaotic fan favorite to genuine concern. Eventually, Ronnie stepped away from the show, citing mental health struggles amid growing pressure. The fallout permanently altered his legacy. What once appeared as dramatic personality traits were reinterpreted as warning signs illustrating how reality television can soften dangerous behavior until real-world consequences force a reckoning. 18. Mike the Situation Sorrentino. Mike the Situation Sorrentino rose to fame on Jersey Shore as a self-styled icon of confidence excess and unapologetic self-promotion. His persona thrived on humor and bravado, turning exaggerated ego into a brand that resonated with pop culture. Behind the scenes, however, Mike's financial decisions were unraveling. As his income grew, he became involved in a scheme to conceal earnings, submitting false information to avoid paying taxes owed to the federal government. The investigation revealed deliberate attempts to hide money and mislead authorities, contradicting the carefree image he displayed on television. Mike eventually pleaded guilty and served time in prison, a turning point that forced him to confront the consequences of his choices. Unlike many reality stars, he publicly acknowledged his wrongdoing, after release reshaping his narrative around recovery and accountability. The fallout did not erase his crime, but it reframed his public identity from reckless showman to someone attempting to rebuild credibility. His story highlights how reality fame can magnify temptation and how public accountability can redefine a career. 17. Chris Soules. Chris Soules entered The Bachelor as a symbol of sincerity, presenting himself as a grounded Midwestern farmer searching for genuine connection. His calm demeanor and traditional values distinguished him from more theatrical leads, earning widespread affection from audiences. That image collapsed following a fatal hit-and-run accident that resulted in the death of another man. Investigators reported that Soules left the scene before authorities arrived, raising immediate questions about responsibility and judgment. Although he later contacted emergency services and cooperated with law enforcement, the incident marked an irreversible break between his public persona and reality. Legal proceedings culminated in a guilty plea, ending his presence within the franchise and eliminating any path back to televised romance. The fallout transformed Soules from beloved lead to a figure defined by tragedy. His story serves as a sobering reminder that reality television's most wholesome images can be undone by a single decision, leaving a legacy shaped not by performance, but by consequence. 16. Alexis Neiers. Alexis Neiers entered reality television through Pretty Wild as a young woman immersed in Los Angeles excess, projecting ambition, glamour, and an unfiltered desire for fame. Her on-screen persona suggested reckless youth chasing attention, but few viewers understood how closely the show mirrored her real life at the time. While cameras followed her supposed rise, Alexis was already connected to a string of high-profile burglaries carried out by the group later known as the Bling Ring. These crimes targeted celebrity homes, feeding an obsession with luxury and proximity to stardom. When her arrest occurred during filming, The boundary between reality TV and real criminal behavior disappeared entirely. Court proceedings revealed deeper involvement than she initially admitted, reframing her image from naive aspirant to symbol of celebrity fixation taken to criminal extremes. The fallout altered her trajectory permanently. Instead of becoming a fashion figure or media personality, Alexis became defined by the burglaries themselves. Though she later sought rehabilitation and reinvention through advocacy and recovery work, her legacy remains tied to the moment when fame-seeking crossed into felony territory, exposing the darker psychology behind reality television's allure. 15. Farrah Abraham. Farrah Abraham emerged on Teen Mom as a volatile mix of ambition, grief, and emotional instability, drawing attention for her confrontational behavior and relentless pursuit of fame beyond the show. Her televised narrative framed her struggles as growing pains, emphasizing resilience and independence. Off-camera, however, Farrah's conduct increasingly involved public disturbances that escalated into legal trouble. She was arrested following an aggressive altercation in which authorities described her behavior as hostile and uncooperative, reinforcing concerns that her volatility extended beyond performance. These incidents undermined the redemption arc she attempted to maintain, revealing a pattern of conflict tied to pressure and notoriety. The fallout strained her relationship with producers and ultimately led to her removal from the franchise. Despite attempts to rebrand herself through business ventures and media appearances, Farrah's public identity remained dominated by controversy. Her story illustrates how reality fame can intensify unresolved behavioral issues, transforming personal chaos into recurring legal and reputational consequences rather than stability or growth. 14. Ryan Edwards. Ryan Edwards appeared on Teen Mom OG as a subdued presence, often overshadowed by louder personalities, yet central to the show's exploration of young parenthood. His calm exterior masked a growing struggle with addiction that gradually became visible to viewers. As substance abuse worsened, Ryan's off-screen behavior drew legal attention. He faced multiple arrests for drug possession and probation violations, revealing a cycle of relapse and accountability failures that contradicted the restrained persona shown on television. Court records documented repeated attempts at rehabilitation alongside continued legal setbacks, painting a portrait of instability that the show could only partially capture. The fallout reshaped his role within the franchise. Screen time diminished, family relationships deteriorated, and public sympathy was replaced by concern. Ryan's legacy became less about reality TV drama and more about the sobering reality of addiction intersecting with fame. His story underscores the limits of reality television's ability to portray recovery when legal consequences repeatedly intervene. 13. Tila Tequila. Tila Tequila rose to prominence during the early wave of reality television through A Shot at Love with Tila Tequila, cultivating a persona built on provocation, unpredictability, and boundary-pushing spectacle. Her fame arrived at a moment when shock value translated directly into attention, and she leaned fully into that formula. But beneath the exaggerated on-screen behavior was a history of volatility that predated her rise. Tila became involved in repeated legal incidents tied to assault, harassment, and disorderly conduct, often linked to confrontations that escalated beyond control. As her public platform expanded, so did the consequences of her behavior. Statements and actions outside of television intensified scrutiny and accelerated her professional isolation. Networks distanced themselves, opportunities vanished, and the persona that once fueled her fame became a liability. The fallout left her largely removed from mainstream media, remembered less for innovation and more for the instability that followed. Tila's story illustrates how reality television shows can reward extreme behavior temporarily, while failing to address the deeper issues that eventually surface when performance and reality become indistinguishable. 12. Richard Hatch. Richard Hatch entered television history as the first winner of Survivor, redefining the genre through strategy manipulation and unapologetic confidence. He presented himself as intellectually superior, openly embracing tactics that others feared would alienate audiences. That boldness made him iconic, but it also masked serious misconduct off camera. After his victory, Hatch failed to report his winnings and additional income, engaging in prolonged tax evasion despite repeated warnings. Federal investigators dismantled his claims of misunderstanding, presenting evidence of deliberate deception. His conviction marked one of the earliest moments when reality television's pioneers faced real-world accountability. The fallout was swift and symbolic. Hatch served time in prison, and the image of a master strategist collapsed into one of hubris undone by law. Though he attempted to return to television in later years, his criminal record reshaped his legacy. Rather than being remembered solely as a game-changer, he became an example of how intelligence and confidence, when unchecked, can rationalize choices that lead to irreversible consequences. 11. Jon Gosselin. Jon Gosselin became a familiar figure through Jon and Kate. +8, portrayed as an overwhelmed father, navigating domestic chaos under relentless public exposure. His persona relied on relatability, positioning him as a man struggling to maintain normalcy while fame disrupted family life. Behind the scenes, however, financial disputes revealed a different narrative. Jon faced allegations involving unauthorized withdrawals and misuse of funds connected to the show's expanding media empire. As his marriage deteriorated publicly, these claims compounded scrutiny and eroded trust. Legal filings and court involvement reframed his image from sympathetic parent to a participant in prolonged conflict, driven by money and control. The fallout removed him from the series entirely and left his reputation defined by controversy rather than family appeal. Attempts to return to private life were overshadowed by lingering legal and custody battles. Jon's story demonstrates how reality television can transform personal relationships into economic ventures, and how disputes over control can dismantle the very image that fame was built upon. 10. Kelly Hyland. Kelly Hyland became a familiar presence on Dance Moms as a parent who openly resisted Abby Lee Miller's authoritarian coaching style. Her on-screen identity centered on protection and frustration, often positioning her as the voice pushing back against a system built on pressure and humiliation. What began as verbal clashes escalated into a physical confrontation during filming, exposing how volatile the environment had become. The incident resulted in police involvement and criminal charges, forcing the show to confront the reality that its drama had crossed into real-world consequences. The fallout was immediate. Kelly and her daughters were removed from the series, ending their storyline abruptly. Legal disputes followed, and her reputation within the franchise shifted from concerned parent to symbol of a breaking point. Kelly's case highlights how prolonged exposure to high-pressure reality settings can blur boundaries, turning manufactured conflict into irreversible legal outcomes. 9. Larissa Lima. Larissa Lima entered 90 Day Fiancé as a confrontational, emotionally intense figure whose volatile relationship became a central narrative of the season. Her on-screen persona emphasized vulnerability and conflict, drawing sympathy from some viewers while alarming others. Off-camera, repeated domestic incidents led to multiple arrests, revealing a pattern of behavior far more serious than televised arguments suggested. Police reports detailed recurring altercations that challenged the narrative of situational conflict. As legal scrutiny increased, the network faced mounting pressure over her continued presence. The fallout resulted in her removal from the franchise, effectively ending her reality TV career. Attempts to pivot toward online ventures did little to distance her from the criminal history that followed. Larissa's story underscores how reality television can frame instability as entertainment until legal records expose its real impact. 8. Geoffrey Paschel. Geoffrey Paschel appeared on 90 Day Fiancé before the 90 days as a composed, articulate suitor who framed his life as a journey toward redemption. His calm demeanor contrasted sharply with the franchise's typical chaos, encouraging viewers to accept his narrative at face value. That image unraveled as details of his extensive criminal history emerged, including allegations of assault and kidnapping tied to violent domestic incidents. Court proceedings later confirmed convictions that starkly contradicted his televised portrayal. The fallout was severe, public outrage intensified, cast members distanced themselves, and his presence became one of the most criticized casting decisions in the franchise's history. Geoffrey's case remains a stark reminder that a controlled on-screen persona can conceal dangerous realities that only surface once legal accountability intervenes. 7. Chad Johnson. Chad Johnson became infamous through The Bachelorette and Bachelor in Paradise as a figure defined by hostility, confrontation, and a refusal to follow the unspoken rules of reality dating television. His on-screen persona leaned into aggression as authenticity, presenting himself as someone too honest to be likable. While producers framed his behavior as villain, entertainment events outside the show revealed that the volatility was not confined to performance. Chad became involved in multiple legal incidents tied to domestic violence, property damage, and alcohol-related altercations. Arrests and police reports documented a pattern of behavior far more serious than televised arguments, shifting public perception from shock value to concern. The fallout was swift. Appearances were canceled, franchises distanced themselves, and his brief reality TV career effectively ended. Attempts to rebrand himself through online platforms failed to overcome the weight of documented misconduct. Chad's story demonstrates how reality television can mistake instability for marketable drama until real-world consequences expose the danger beneath the spectacle. 6. Monica Beverly Hillz. Monica Beverly Hillz entered RuPaul's Drag Race as a reserved yet emotionally resonant contestant, earning attention for her openness about identity and personal struggle. Her persona emphasized honesty and vulnerability, standing in contrast to the heightened theatrics typical of the series. Long before her television appearance, however, Monica experienced a period of financial instability that led to a criminal charge involving check fraud. Though the offense stemmed from hardship rather than malice, its resurfacing complicated the narrative presented on screen. Public reaction was divided. Some viewers viewed the past as evidence of resilience, while others questioned accountability. Unlike many reality stars, Monica's fallout was subtle rather than explosive. She continued performing and advocating, but the criminal record remained an unspoken layer beneath her public image. Her story reflects the nuanced reality that not all criminal pasts signal malice, yet they still shape perception once exposed. 5. Tiffany New York Pollard. Tiffany New York Pollard became a defining icon of early reality television through Flavor of Love and I Love New York, crafting a persona built on theatrical confrontation, sharp language, and emotional extremes. She transformed chaos into entertainment, influencing an entire generation of reality programming. Beneath the exaggerated performance, however, a lesser-known legal incident from her early adulthood involving a physical altercation. Though it did not result in long-term incarceration, the arrest foreshadowed the intensity that later became her trademark. As her fame grew, the resurfacing of that incident blurred the line between character and reality, raising questions about whether her on-screen aggression was performance or amplification. The fallout was minimal compared to others on this list, as audiences embraced her flaws as part of her legend. Still, the existence of a criminal past adds complexity to her legacy, suggesting that the persona that captivated viewers was rooted in real experiences long before cameras arrived. 4. NeNe Leakes. NeNe Leakes rose to prominence as the breakout star of The Real Housewives of Atlanta, commanding attention with sharp humor, emotional candor, and an ability to dominate scenes with a single line. Her persona projected confidence and reinvention, framing success as something earned through resilience and personality. Long before her television fame, however, NeNe experienced a period marked by financial instability and poor decisions that led to arrests related to theft and writing bad checks. When these records resurfaced during her peak popularity, they complicated the narrative of effortless success that reality television often promotes. Rather than deny the past, NeNe acknowledged it, reframing those years as evidence of survival rather than scandal. The fallout unfolded differently from most public curiosity intensified, but her career continued to expand into acting, hosting, and stage work. Her story illustrates how transparency and timing can reshape the impact of a criminal past. In NeNe's case, the exposure added depth rather than destruction, challenging the assumption that all revelations must end careers. 3. Ottavia Busia. Ottavia Busia appeared on culinary-focused reality programs such as Chopped and No Reservations, where her sharp intellect, physical discipline, and unconventional background set her apart from typical food personalities. She cultivated an image of composure and self-control qualities reinforced by her martial arts experience. That image contrasted with an earlier chapter of her life marked by instability and a physical altercation that resulted in a misdemeanor charge. While the offense was not severe, its later discovery disrupted the assumption that her on-screen discipline reflected an unbroken past. Public reaction was measured rather than explosive, with many interpreting the incident as a reminder of personal evolution rather than defining failure. The fallout did not derail her professional path, but it added complexity to her public narrative. Ottavia's story underscores how reality television often presents finished identities, omitting the turbulent processes that shape them. Her criminal past became a footnote that quietly challenged the myth of seamless transformation. 2. Chase Severino. Chase Severino gained recognition through My Big Fat Fabulous Life, where he was introduced as a calm, supportive partner whose relationship arc emphasized sincerity and emotional grounding. His on-screen persona suggested stability, offering contrast to the show's heightened drama. Off-screen, however, Chase faced allegations involving financial misconduct tied to earlier business activities. Reports pointed to questionable accounting practices and disputes that raised concerns about transparency and ethical judgment. Though details remained limited, the seriousness of the allegations conflicted with the image presented on television. As scrutiny increased, his presence within the franchise diminished, and producers quietly shifted focus away from his storyline. The fallout reshaped public perception, replacing sympathy with doubt. Chase's case highlights how reality television can elevate personal narratives without fully examining their foundations, and how unresolved questions about conduct can quietly erode credibility once exposed. 1. Doug Hutchison. Doug Hutchison entered the reality TV orbit later in his career, appearing in celebrity-focused docuseries during a period when public attention had shifted from his acting work to his personal life. On camera, he framed himself as a misunderstood figure, overwhelmed by judgment, emphasizing isolation and emotional vulnerability in the face of intense scrutiny. That narrative, however, concealed a pattern of troubling behavior that predated his reality appearances. Long before cameras followed him, Hutchison faced accusations involving harassment and aggressive conduct incidents that raised questions about power dynamics and control. His marriage to a minor legal under specific state laws at the time reignited scrutiny of his past and intensified public alarm, prompting renewed examination of earlier allegations that had never fully disappeared. As media attention increased, additional reports of volatile behavior surfaced, widening the gap between the self-portrayal he offered on screen and the reality of his conduct. The fallout was swift and lasting. Acting opportunities vanished, public sentiment hardened, and his attempts to reframe his image through reality television only amplified criticism rather than diffusing it. Hutchison's legacy stands as one of the most unsettling intersections of fame, legality, and ethics, a case where exposure did not redeem but instead revealed patterns that reality TV could no longer soften or obscure. Reality television is built on the promise of authenticity, yet the stories in this countdown reveal how carefully that promise is managed. Behind curated confessionals and amplified drama, many of these stars carried pasts that only surfaced once fame made secrecy impossible. Some entered the spotlight already shaped by criminal decisions. Others discovered that visibility magnified their worst choices rather than erasing them. What connects every story is the same uncomfortable truth: reality TV often rewards performance, not accountability. When consequences arrive, they do not unfold on camera. They arrive in courtrooms, legal records, and irreversible reputational collapse. These are not just scandals, but reminders of how easily image can replace truth in entertainment. Before you go, tell us in the comments which story changed the way you see reality television, and which franchise do you believe is hiding the most secrets today?